It is now my great honor and pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Tony Nader. Tony Nader, originally from Lebanon, is a medical doctor and neuroscientist trained at Harvard University and MIT with a PhD in brain and cognitive sciences. He's a globally recognized expert in the science of consciousness and human development and has published extensively. His work includes studies about the close relationship between the ancient Vedic literature and the structure and function of human physiology. Dr. Nader is expanding our understanding of the relationship between consciousness and physiology and how to develop the full human potential through meditation. Dr. Nader, we are keen to hear from you today about meditation, its relevance and benefits for modern living. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, it's a great honor to be with you, and I think my address today will be a commentary on the beautiful introductions and points that were brought by their excellencies and the speakers who preceded me. It's an introduction, what they did, and actually also a conclusion. So I hope I'll give you the middle of the subject to try to unpack a little bit, how does this work? And from a neuropsychological perspective, a neuroscientific perspective, what is meditation and how does it help not only for individual life, feeling better, removing anxiety and stress, but its scope in terms of development of life as a whole, its meaning in fulfilling the purpose of life, and in what is often called reaching a state of inner peace and happiness and well-being that is not disturbed by the environment and the changing conditions on the outside aspects of life, which is often called enlightenment, which means reaching a state or where we see things in the light rather than being in darkness. And actually, its scope extends even more to our collective existence in terms of what it can contribute to harmony and world peace as a whole. So it's really a momentous and glorious moment that is to be celebrated and received in a grand way, and its impact of this moment of the United Nations celebration will only be recognized and upheld as time goes by. So let's go to the process of what happens during meditation, even from a perspective of evolution, human evolution, and our nervous system. Human nervous system has, of course, places where it gets input through our sensory systems. These inputs are analyzed or experienced, like felt, if it's pain or something, or if it's visual or hearing or smell. We have a detection of something that is happening. And through the history of evolution, this has been embedded in our DNA as an epigenetic factor, which means how changes in the physiology actually can influence DNA itself, and we can pass it on to our other generations. It also influences how our brain works and the plasticity, which means the ability of the brain to change its ways of functioning. And that leads to situations where when we get an input through sensory experience, this input is analyzed and it's necessarily said, okay, what do I do about this? What's going on? And then it gets us to process that and then have an output. The output is either our speech or our action. And so what's happening is we have an information, it's processed, we have an output. So the output depends on the information, but also how we process it in ourselves. So we are actually active aspects of the process of output, which means our actions and speech, which will then influence others. So if we go back to the primitive person in the jungle, let's say, we won't go too far there, but quickly to explain how it works. In the jungle, there is danger. And the number one function of this system, which is our instrument, the nervous system, the instrument of our perception and action, is to protect us from danger. And there is a place in the nervous system which is very, very important and very basic, which is called the limbic system, and specifically a place which is very sensitive to stress or danger. Because that's the first thing we want to do. If you are in the jungle and a tiger is jumping at you, it's not the time to think about music and philosophy and all of that. So you have to absolutely focus and narrow your awareness to exactly what has to happen. And this generates an immediate reaction in the physiology, which is what we call sympathetic reaction, where there is a changing of blood flow, there is changing in the focus of the eyes, blood pressure increases, the breathing increases. And what it does, it prepares us to fight or to run away. And another thing that can happen is to freeze, because animals used to freeze to be hidden so that they're not noticed. And so we have inherited that in our nervous system. And then if this continues to be at a long time, it creates huge wear and tear on the physiology and on consciousness and on well-being, which we will address also. What happens then to that human being in the jungle? They come back to their cave or wherever they are, and then they have a moment of rest. So what kind of rest there is? There are different states of consciousness. In the jungle, you were first awake and alert, and now you're going to relax to heal yourself. So you sleep. Sleep is a kind of consciousness where the body heals itself. During sleep, there is dreaming. And that dreaming is a state which actually strengthens the memories of what has happened, so that when you come back, actually, your memories are consolidated. And it also enacts things that you would have wanted to do in a different way, if, like fighting a monster. Maybe in the night you fight it during the dream in a different way, and you run many movies like that to try to see how you can do it. But you are in a dream state, because if you're awake, it looks funny and ridiculous, and it's not for real. And then you have the waking state. And these are specific states of consciousness that we have found to have physiologically different changes in the brain, different changes in the physiology, how it works, and breathing and heart rate, etc. Everyone has a different signature of a state of consciousness. Now, this person who has come back to their cave and is sitting there also has time to prepare the fire, listens to the wind, or sitting there with the family. And these are moments when they are awake and they review on an awakefulness level what is happening and what has happened and what can be done and how it can be done. And for certain moments, they relax their mind and they feel calm. I think this is the seed of meditation. It's a different state of consciousness. It's a state of consciousness in which there is wakefulness, at the same time rest. So during activity, you have wakefulness but active, you are facing things. During sleep, you are not active and you are not awake. During dream, you also have a state where you're not awake, but you have activity in the physiology. And this state was missing. This state of meditation is a real state that is missing from our daily activity, which naturally used to be done in the process of living in a normal life. And again, what is that state? It's a state of restful wakefulness. And you realize that when you're in life, you are rested and awake and alert. This is when you perform better. So I am guessing that with time and experience, these great traditions have improved on that and found ways to use attention, to use sound, to use frequencies, even music, even different things, where you can allow the physiology to rest and stay at the same time awake. So there is an inward directed look with a very important level of awareness that accompanies this. And this has developed a special part of the brain gradually and with more ability to use it, which is called the prefrontal cortex, which is an area in the brain to the front, which is special in humans and which controls our ability to see the future, our ability to plan, our ability to think in a positive way, in a clear way, in a rested way, and overcome this part of the brain, in particular the limbic system and the amygdala which deals with those stresses and strains directly, and calm them down. So this is a background. What happens in our modern time? We're not necessarily anymore interested in the person in the jungle. What happens in modern time is that we live always and continuously as if in the jungle, under stress and under fear and danger. The door makes a noise. The physiology remembers on a very profound level that maybe the tiger is jumping. Of course, we know it's not, but on a very deep level of our awareness, there is a sense of danger, a sense of stress. You walk in the street, you're always aware or afraid that somebody will do this to you or something like that. There is an underlying, and I don't need to explain this more, an underlying sense of fear and danger that's happening all the time. And that has to be balanced, has to be relieved. And I'd like to suggest to you, which is my strong feeling and opinion from a neuropsychological perspective, that meditation is not a luxury. Meditation is a necessity. In the same way as dreaming and sleeping are necessities, which you say if you don't sleep actually and you don't dream, you'll die, actually, you will actually die. And if you don't meditate, you're not giving your physiology something that it actually needs from a very fundamental level, and which allows you to reestablish yourself and reset yourself. It's like your computer that's working all the time and has so much software that is running and suddenly it starts working slowly, it's not working well. So you need a reset system. And meditation is that reset system. So that reset system is universal because it doesn't depend on believing in it. It doesn't depend on a particular way of life, a particular religion, a particular belief in anything. It's actually mechanical and simple, as was said by our speakers. And it resets the system like you turn off your computer in order to turn it on again and have all the processes working together. So that is a background of the idea about TM. About transcendental meditation as one technique, but about all the other techniques of mindfulness, concentration, contemplation, and there is a whole range of practices that can help to get us at different levels of awareness, different levels of consciousness. So we think of the mind as an extension of the body, or actually in reality, the body is an extension of the mind, and that is a whole concept of philosophy, which is first, which is primary. Is it matter or is it consciousness? And we have the strong understanding and logic that consciousness is primary and that physiology and matter actually follow, but they are a continuum. It's not a separation. I'd like to show you some slides first about scientific findings, about what meditation does, and then take us to understand how does it work, except for what I just said in terms of resetting the system. How does it work even to help us develop our full potential and to help us even in creating world peace? The problems have been highlighted. We know the world today is facing war and conflicts, and we know that wars start in the mind of men and women, and they and them and his and her. And that is the UNESCO charter that said it. I didn't. But it's a reality. All that we do starts in our awareness, our consciousness, our understanding of things. But there is something more profound than just on the surface level, which I would like to share with you also. Let's go through some slides to see the effects of meditation in a real scientific setting. And these are hundreds of scientific research studies that have been done on the effect of meditation and comparing how it works. So this is the brain, what we see here. I don't have a pointer, but you can see in the middle the amygdala, and the limbic system is around it, and then the prefrontal cortex, where these anticipation of the future, where the ability to have the CEO of the brain controlling the entire activity of the nervous system. And we will see that meditation influences and enhances that ability in the prefrontal cortex. Whereas in the situation of stress, then this is known. I don't need to explain it much more. It's all the reactions that lead to changes in the physiology. And if those are not reset, then you have wear and tear on the physiology, and that's what causes disease. Different people have different predispositions. So if you are somebody who have a predisposition for diabetes or for arthritis, when you are under stress and strain and all of these factors are working together, then you will get to become diabetic, or you will get arthritis, or you will get heart disease. And that is really because you have some predisposition, which the environment and your style of life exaggerates and makes the disease happen. So what we want is prevention, and this is where meditation creates an important, powerful prevention. Now, different kinds of meditation have different signatures in the brain. We have focused attention, so concentration is one type, and it has a certain wavelengths of brain activity when you do electroencephalography. And this is of the gamma range, which is the higher range. So the vibrations, the reverberations in the brain are on the higher level. Open monitoring is what we usually call mindfulness. So you're sitting comfortably and you are observing in a non-judgmental way some aspect of your mind, some aspect of your physiology, whether a thought, whether breathing, etc., in a kind of a dream state, but still awake. And that has a slow wave function, like daydreaming in a sense. There are techniques that actually take you deeper to transcend, which means to go beyond all the surface fluctuations of the mind, which means all kind of monitoring or trying to make the mind go somewhere or trying to focus on something, you let go of them, and through a special technique, in particular transcendental meditation, you go beyond all feelings, beyond all sensations, beyond all experiences. That means you transcend, and you reach a very, very deep state of wakefulness, yet you are very rested. And this has a signature in the brain, which is alpha wave, which is 8 to 10 hertz, which 8 to 10 frequencies of fluctuation per second. Now, this is alpha wave. We can move to the... Now, these waves can be either localized in one part of the brain, or can they spread out? Here we see on the left side, eyes closed, and it just shows that these connections between different parts of the brain happen when there is an experience of deep meditation or deep transcending. This EEG coherence, which means the whole brain start working together, not just independent parts, but working together, has been correlated with increased creativity, concept learning, grade point average, moral reasoning. So what's happening is actually having an impact on all aspects of life: ability to choose, ability to be creative. Even intelligence quotient have been shown to improve in people who practice this program. Now, in anxiety, and we know now what has been mentioned, we have a tsunami of problems on mental health that is coming up. It's really a very serious problem. The psychologists and the mental health practitioners have been complaining that the patients they have are very, very large in number. It is costing the world about $1 trillion per year, $1 trillion mental health. 4 out of 7 people in their lifetime will experience mental health issues. Today, 1 in 7 adolescents have actually a mental health problem, and they are usually treated in ways that don't go to the root cause. And meditation as a whole, all of these are different types of meditation. We're pointing out in blue the transcending, which means going beyond, not just staying on some level, going beyond those with a special technique, has a most profound experience and also result in terms of reducing trait anxiety. Now we discussed the brain, and we see that those who practice these techniques and go deeply in transcending, we can see in the next slide that if you analyze their brain through functional magnetic resonance imaging, which detects the blood flow, you will see that, for example, on the slide that is to your left, those colors are to the front. This is the front part of the brain. And it actually shows that more blood flow goes to that frontal cortex, whereas under stress and strain, more blood flow goes to the deep areas that are what we call the limbic system or the stress-related areas. So there is an actual physiological change, which here is shown in terms of different levels of what relaxation does. For example, plasma lactate, which is related to anxiety and stress and strain, respiration rate, galvanic skin response, which shows there is more relaxed activity in the physiology. And it has a direct effect on blood pressure, very significant, which is very significant and has been, published and reviewed journals, and there have been meta-analysis on it. So it reduces blood pressure. And here we have different levels that show that there is increased cognitive abilities, there is in students increased math achievements, increased achievement in even English, and higher rates are obtained in the national exams for those who practice. And all of this shows very profound changes on the cognitive level. Coronary heart disease is a big problem related to stress and strain and all these things that we've talked about. And here there is a study that shows very profound effects on reducing even diabetes, the reaction to sugar, the insulin resistance, etc., have been improved. So this really shows a profound effect on the hormonal level, because we have the psychoneuro relation, which is between the mind, what it thinks, the neurological activity, which we have seen in terms of waves and activities and where the blood goes in the brain. That has an effect on the hypothalamus, which is the master gland of the hormones, which goes to the pituitary gland and then to the physiology. And therefore, there is a profound influence on how the hormones work, and the hormones influence the immune system. That's why we have seen improvement in immunity also in people practicing this program. Atherosclerosis is very significant. The American Heart Association recommends, for example, meditation, and particularly transcendental meditation, in terms of reduction of atherosclerotic heart disease. We can see actually that if you follow up people for 5 years, for example, in terms of heart attack, stroke, and death, if they have already some coronary artery disease, those who practice transcendental meditation had 47% less these problems, less death, less heart attack, less strokes over 5-year follow-up. So it's a real thing. It's not because it's some mental thing that we say, oh, it's mental, it's physiological, psychological, and all that. It's a very real thing. It reduces your blood pressure, it saves you from dying, and it has important effects on your life as a whole and your well-being as a whole. And in fact, when we looked at this study more carefully, we found that this 47% reduction was for people who practice one time only, even though they're recommended to practice 2 times. So the scientists said, let's look at those who actually practice 2 times a day, not just 1 time. And the next slide shows that it was actually 66% reduction in death, heart attack, and stroke. So that is a technique for living better, being healthier, and dying less. And why not? So that is a very important and profound technology that can help us in our society, particularly with the incredible costs of medical care and problems that it causes. And also because if you have those people roaming around who are stressed and strained and anxious, they're going to create social problems. They're going to make wrong decisions. They're going to be angry. They're going to be upset. And if they are a little weak, they'll do crime. And that is really something that creates a snowball effect in a negative way on society. So we have something absolutely great. I think the United Nations is to be glorified, particularly those who have supported and sponsored this initiative. And because it's really going to be great. The impact is going to be amazing. Next slide, please. Now, expenses in terms of budgets. Let's think in terms of budgets. So we have here a line going up and with points like that in the middle, a vertical line. This is when we have followed up people with how much they are costing in terms of physician expenses, and put the line there where they started practicing meditation, transcendental meditation in this case. And you see that those who practice transcendental meditation, for people over age 65, their cost goes completely down as compared to control groups. So it saves money, it saves life, it saves health, it gives happiness, it gives enlightenment. So we are really at the threshold of something really grand that it's recognized on such a global level. And again, chapeau to those who have sponsored that, and thank you for doing it. Next slide. That is becoming now to a completely different perspective. What happens when many people practice transcendental meditation? When many people transcend, when many people go beyond this. So we had our founder, and I, of course, belong to the Transcendental Meditation movement, and Maharishi Mahesh Yogi was the founder, and he predicted that when a small group of people practice this program together, there will be a decrease in crime, decrease in accidents of the road, etc. So we did so far 118 scientific studies, many of them published in peer-reviewed journals that show the effectiveness of transcending, of meditation, on the society as a whole. Here is an experiment which was done in Washington. I think it was 1990 something, 93. I have an expert here who tells me. And I was there, you can see me here in the bottom on the right side, sitting in the front. I guess you must have eagle eyes to see, but and then we predicted, it was predicted, not just said, okay, let's do a retrospective study. We predicted that we will reduce crime, accidents of the road, problems by as much as, say, 20%. And the scientists said it will take a huge storm with 2 meters of snow to reduce, because we see the trends, to reduce crime during that period. There was no snow. Things completely continue to be the same in terms of daily life, but there was a reduction which is very significant, of 25% less crime and less accidents of the road, less even admissions to hospitals during that time. And the journal that was receiving this study said, this is crazy. We don't find the logic for it, but the statistics are so accurate and so good, and you predicted it, and you got statisticians to study it who are not part of your group, and it actually happened, so we are forced to publish it. But they wrote a disclaimer. We don't know how it works. We can't say anything about it, but the statistics are real, and they're worth letting the world know about it. And so that has been repeated, this and others, hundreds of times. And here we see, for example, in this particular project, the very significant decrease in crime in a time series analysis that compared different baselines and how it happened during the demonstration. Now we said, okay, we have groups that practice this program, and particularly we have a university in Iowa. It's Maharishi International University. I happen to be the president, recently elected. And we have there people who come and practice this program together. But these numbers fluctuate. So they fluctuate over the years and over time. So we said, let's see when those groups were higher in number, what has happened, and when they were lower. Just simple observation. And what we have found is, you see these different lines, and one of the lines is the group size. This is the group size. And this is the study period, because the group here was less, and then it became more, and then it stopped at the end. And you see how systematically stress index, murder, rape, assault, robbery, infant mortality, drug deaths, vehicle fatalities, even children deaths by injuries got reduced during that period. And that is dramatic, statistically significant at a very, very high level. So basically, this is what I wanted to share with you. The question is, how does it work? How can something like this work? And the reason is that the ancient cultures, who is represented here, and particularly in the East, have a different worldview than what is modern in terms of today's worldview. What is that worldview? It's a worldview that consciousness is primary, that there is a field which is called consciousness. And from that field emerges all that we see in the universe and all that is there. And if you go to that field, you are creating waves of coherence and harmony, because you're aligning yourself with what we call natural law, the laws of nature. What it says is that we are all entangled, we are all interconnected, and physics, even today, is highlighting that entanglement, that action that one person does has an effect on the people they interact with in a much more profound level than just on the level of talking and convincing and talking on the surface. We are all interconnected. We appear isolated and separate, which we are on some level, but the collective feelings, the collective consciousness, the collective awareness that we create through our individual awareness has an influence on us, and we have an influence on it. And so when we go deeper into our awareness and reach that state of deep consciousness, profound awareness, we are enlivening in the entire society a state of peace and harmony and calm that is beyond intellectual analysis on the surface level, but which can be understood from an intellectual level and even from the most modern scientific findings in physics and other aspects of research about the reality of life. as being based on what is called a unified field rather than on segmentation on the outer level. So what we're saying is that when you reach that deep state, you enliven with yourself the total forces of natural law, of the laws of nature, the field of consciousness, and you then guide reality in a different direction. So that is how we can see the collective effect. We are on a collective level. Now, these are showing the very, very profound and important changes in traffic fatalities, et cetera. We have highlighted them. How does it work? Imagine the mind is like an ocean, and you are seeing or feeling things on the surface of the ocean. Your mind is going round and round and just going from one thought to the other, jumping around. And there is a way through meditation to let it settle down and focus. Concentration is one way. You focus the attention, but you leave it on the surface. On the left side of this chart is what physics describes the universe. It says if you go from molecules to atoms, from atoms to particles, and then keep going down to elementary particles, then you find fields, and if you find those fields, there are 4 fields, whatever, electromagnetic, gravitation, etc. If you keep going down, you find a unified field. So there is, even from physics perspective, a unified field of the laws of nature. And what we are saying is that this unified field is a field of consciousness. It's your consciousness. We are all there when you experience that, when you experience your deep inner self, devoid of memories and thoughts and fears and limiting beliefs, you are experiencing the self of everything and everyone and enlivening that. So concentration is a good technique to calm the mind, but then you can go deeper through different levels of what we call open monitoring or mindfulness. You go much deeper there, and then you can also transcend, which takes you to that field, and enlivening that field creates the effects. So this is something phenomenal, what is happening. It's like a fulfillment of dreams of all the well-wishers of humanity. And that is the ability to go back to the self, go back home, which is our true inner self, enliven that on an individual level, enliven that in society, and then naturally, spontaneously, the right decisions will be made, and we can have a life of peace and harmony and well-being in the family of nations. Today, we have, again, a great United Nations that has collected itself after wars, and the Company of Nations, the UNESCO was created, and all the different, so that no wars will ever happen again. That this will be the wars that end all wars. It didn't happen. Why? Because we didn't follow our intuition. What was our intuition? Since wars begin in the minds of man, it is in the minds of man that the defenses of peace will be constructed. This is in the charter of the UNESCO. But there was no technique to work on the mind of man except convincing, forcing, trying to cooperate, which is fine, but only on a surface level. What we need is go to the depths of life, to the depths of being, and that's what meditation ultimately does. And that's where now I feel we are moving in that direction, where individual problems can be solved, and then our collective being can be on a higher level of awareness, consciousness, and performance, and life can be really lived in fullness. Really, thank you for doing that. Thank you for inviting me. It's a joy to be with you.